Hey, let's start the show.
For Thursday, August 19th, 2021. Welcome to This Is Only a Test, the official podcast of Tested.com. Welcome to the podcast this week. I got Norm here. That's me. Also, Kishore. Hey, Kishore.
That's me.
That is you. Welcome back to the show. We missed you last week. Devendra was a wonderful sit-in to stand in, but we are starting with a duo cast this week because Jeremy had to jump on a work call. We had the three of us. We're all ready to record, but all this is to say, hopefully he will be able to join and jump back in because there's some VR stuff toward the end of the show I would love to discuss with both of you guys, not just you, Kishore, as much as it is a nice welcome present. I like your new camera setup. You have a nice wide angle view now.
I hate it. So I had my first big tech failure of the pandemic. I had a knockoff version of the Elgato Cam Link for my DSLR. And I have a Sony a6000. And so the image viewer app that Sony developed, where you can use it in like an OBS capture or just, to essentially set up your DSLR as a webcam, doesn't work for the a6000. It's the next model up that it's actually provisioned for. So I had to use a Cam Link, and my knockoff one just started failing this week. So I went to I will just straight up tell you, I stole my kid's webcam. And so this is some generic webcam I bought for him, for virtual school last year. And it's all fish-eyed, and I hate it, but it looks okay. So whatever.
All right.
I can't do things.
The wide angle is a look. It's definitely a look.
It's a look.
I would dare to say it's flattering to the room. Makes your room look a lot bigger than it is.
Yeah. Maybe wide angle is my best angle. Let's go there. I was gonna say just really quickly. Congrats to Devendra about the move to just Filmcast. And if people haven't listened to the Filmcast before, really highly recommend it. It's a really good deep dive into a lot of films. I know there's a lot of film podcasts out there, but I feel like those guys do a really good job. And they cover a lot of movies coming out, and we're finally back in a season where there's movie stuff coming.
Oh my God. We're going to talk about movie stuff also, because we did not have you on the podcast last week to talk about the Suicide Squad. And I know all of us had thoughts, and I actually have not heard from you what you thought about the Suicide Squad. Now, we did dive into some light spoilers last week, and I think we're going to do the same here. It's been out for a couple weeks. Not a lot of people are watching it in theaters. A lot of people watch it on HBO Max. So I think we're in the clear in terms of talking plot details. But what did you think about Star of the Conqueror?
As anyone that may have read DC Comics, it is one of the most ridiculous DC villains. It's also one that has a ton of potential because it's mind control. And so mind control is one of Superman's biggest weaknesses. So you can there's storylines there that are interesting. I really liked Suicide Squad for the reset it has done on the DC EU, in the sense of so many of the bad DC movies are just take themselves too seriously. They are the just over the top, witty, morose films. This is a movie that right out the gate was going to make fun of itself, make fun of the characters, and just embrace a gory kind of pulpy comic aesthetic, without, trying to set up these big dramatic character development arcs. And I think they did a good job of that. That being said, it was almost 2.5 hours is a bit long. It was 2 hours, 220.
I'll tell you, it was not as long as Fast 9. That was a long movie.
Yes, as somebody that's seen Fast 9, I can attest to that too. I feel like there's a really good hour and a half, hour and 45 minute movie in this. And it kind of dragged at points in the middle, but it just, elevates the kind of filmmaker that James Gunn is, and the levity that he brings and the spirit that he brings to the movie. There's a lot of things you can quibble about this movie. But my main thing is, like, when I was sitting at home watching this on my TV, I was like, damn, this is the kind of movie I wanted to see in a theater, because with a crowd, with people laughing, it would have made the experience better. And so this movie especially suffered from not being able to see it in the movie theater.
I mean, when you have a villain that is a kaiju scale, right, and to put him on an IMAX screen would be the right way to see all the shots of really wide shots. I think the film also doesn't get enough credit of having the climactic battle in broad daylight. Like, you see so many of these
Mhm.
movies where it's the last Suicide Squad, where it's just like dark, gritty, in the shadows. Here, it's like just in the middle of the day, and it holds up. All the effects. I get what you meant about length. There were certainly some subplots, scenes like Harley's romance was a thing. Like, I wouldn't sacrifice it though. I really enjoyed it,
Yeah.
but it felt like a little bit of a detour. The scene where they went to the bar at night, and when they were gonna capture the Thinker, that whole scene felt like could have been a little tighter. But I think he's such a good writer, and he allows these characters to play off each other. You're only meeting some of these characters for the first time, and the last time here, he's got to make the most out of that time.
Well, I mean, let's all agree that the Weasel is the best DC hero that we've seen in many years, and that he deserves a follow-up movie.
He could have been framed. He could have been framed for killing those children. I mean, who knows? Also, that's played by James Gunn's brother, who also played Calendar Man. If you're talking about deep cuts in DC lore, he said after the critical success of this film, he's open to coming back to the DC universe. That DC's been really happy with what he's done, and kind of, I think, salvaging the DCEU and bring some type of continuing that this this universe of characters is something they're going to continue doing, while also having the new Batman, right, the Robert Pattinson Batman, and the TV show spinoff of that Batman already announced for HBO Max. Like, they're
Yeah.
fully embracing multiverse here.
Yeah, I'll be very interested to see how Suicide Squad will play against Matt Reeves' Batman, which I expect to be very somber, very gritty. A lot of deep tones with gravelly voice. But we'll see. I think there's a universe where those movies can coexist. I just don't think we've seen it yet from DC.
Yeah, a lot of Dark Nirvana covers, right? As we can look forward to. So speaking of multiverse, though, we also had the debut of What If on Disney Plus. This is the animated show. The second episode's actually, by the time I'm recording this and finally you're listening to this, second episode's already up. I haven't seen it yet, but I think it's fair to talk about at least the first episode, which is the What If Peggy Carter took the super soldier serum and became Captain Carter. Now, this is a half-hour animated show. It's canon in the sense that it's in the MCU, and they've opened the door for potentially some of these characters to make it into the live action universe. The consequences of the Loki show have allowed the multiverse in the MCU to happen. Um, what did you think of this, the storytelling first, and then the animation?
Yeah, so I should back up, and this is spoiler free for me, and say, What If was a comic book that I would often see in like the kind of 75-cent dollar bin at my local comic store, and I would pick up one, and I loved how it was one shot, self-contained, and it was ridiculous stories, but it was all contained, and it was sort of fun in that way. I didn't like their choice that this could tie to canon, because it takes away a little something from that just wild exploration. And so I kind of hope nothing here ends up being canon. It's just like, oh, that just happened in a multiverse, and be done with it.
Marvel Zombies, they're not going to bring that to the MCU, right? I think there are going to be plenty of these what if stories that can stand on their own, just be these fun ROMs. Maybe they'll come back to that thread, but
Yeah,
they
I
don't
guess
all have to converge.
I just miss the definitive. This is a one shot kind of aesthetic to it, and by opening the door, it just opens up all like the speculation and all that kind of stuff. I would rather that all be closed down. The show itself is like a breezy half hour. Like there isn't a lot of like depth of character and everything else. There's a ton of callbacks to the Captain America First Avenger and other movies. There's some minor payoffs for that. But overall the story was it was okay. Like I'm glad I watched it. It was good, but it wasn't great by any means. Voice acting was very good. They brought back most of the MCU people to voice their roles except for Chris Evans.
Pretty good impression,
so even
though.
what good impression?
Pretty good impression,
yeah, for sure.
And also good Hugo Weaving impression. I think they got the same voice actor who did the End Game, or sorry,
right?
The End Game voice.
Yeah,
Infinity War. Yeah.
Infinity War. Ross Marquand. But even like Sebastian Stan is back and Haley Atwell's back. And I actually really like this style of animation. It evokes kind of a throwback style, which really suits the Captain America story that they were telling. It'll be interesting to see how well this animation style works for some of the more cosmically inclined stories that we're going to get. But I think it's beautiful to look at as well.
I'm not sure which animation studio did this, but it reminded me a lot of the Resistance Star Wars show, where on its face, if you look at a single frame, it looks hand drawn, it looks cel shaded, but it really is the advancement in 3D animation that they can flatten it and do all sorts of crazy stuff in 3D, but still create the bold outline cel shaded look really seamlessly. And the action, I think, was my favorite part of this show. The fight scenes with Captain Carter, the way she would take down, they could exaggerate in some of her feats and abilities, right? And just go way beyond what you would be able to choreograph in a live action film.
Yeah, I would say the one kind of part that doesn't work for me is they are taking elements of an hour and a half, 2 hour movie. So they basically took the Captain America First Avenger story and plopped it into a what if frame and told that entire story, but in 30 minutes. Yeah. So like there's a lot of pacing that is just like bam, 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 you're on to the next thing. And so in a way, it's sort of unrelenting. This show doesn't work unless you've seen those films. Like, let's just get that out of the way. And if you're not a fan of those films, I don't think these are going to work for you. So I wish there was a little bit, again, this was a little bit of a serious take. Again, I wish there was a little bit more lightheartedness in some of the writing, and I wish it was paced a little slower. But all in all, it's good.
Yeah, and that's why I'm looking forward to the Marvel Zombies one, because that one feels less like we're going to follow the plot line of a film you've seen before and call out all the places where they do diverge, and just have a separate story that uses familiar faces in an interesting way. And there are 9 episodes. They've already talked about second season that they've commissioned, so it's will be a thing to come. I think definitely doesn't feel as essential as even the Loki and the WandaVision shows are. So a subset of a subset of a subset, but still it's your MCU fix on TV because unlike Black Widow, Shang-Chi is going to be in theaters only and confirmed by IMAX, full IMAX scope. So 1.9 by 1, or I forget the exact aspect ratio. But they had the premiere earlier this week in LA, big red carpet, and most of the cast were there. There were even some spoilers on the red carpet in terms of who made an appearance. I don't know if I want to mention. So I won't mention it. I haven't seen it yet, but the first Twitter impressions, I love how the press team, they allow not full reviews, but they allow the social media impressions first. Those dropped on Monday night, and they were glowing, but particularly, I kind of read between the lines, particularly the action was really a standout point for a lot of these reviewers.
So, excited. I don't know how I feel this movie. I mean, feel two ways about this movie in the sense that the action scenes, like evoking kung fu movies of the past and having that aesthetic come through into the MCU. I love that. I love when the MCU borrows another film genre and incorporates it into the world. I'm also a little tired of the like father son superhero kind of has to, emerge from the shadows of the sins of the father story. And it's not just Marvel that has beaten that into the ground. A lot of other genres have, but the trailer makes it feel like we're going to be following an arc that we've felt so many times before. The origin stories of superheroes is wearing thin on me in the ways that we tell the same origin. So I'm not excited about it from that way. So I'm like really tempering my expectations about this movie as a whole.
I think both this film and Eternals. I think Eternals has the benefit of it less being an origin and more being a unveiling, a revealing
Mhm.
of these new cast of characters. And the thing that I read was that this film, Shang-Chi, is yes, it's a traditional origin story, but it's a revealing of a different part of the MCU, a world, a hidden world, an underworld. I don't know if that's Madripoor, if that's, if it's a more mystical world like we saw in Thor or even Doctor Strange. But it's one that's I'm not sure if it's contractual reasons or a business decision. It's not going to be on Disney Plus Premier Access. So when it comes out early September, I got to find a way to this might be the one to break the seal for me to watch it in theaters, to head to IMAX or Dolby Vision and finally watch my first film in over 2 years in
Yeah,
theaters, at
I
least a
think
year.
same
Yeah,
for me.
yeah.
I don't know if I need to see this movie in IMAX. I just want to see it on a big screen with good sound. So I think the Dolby is actually more appealing to me because that's the thing I can't recreate at home. I mean, I can't recreate an IMAX screen either, but like I want the sound. That's what I miss about the theaters.
Yeah, yeah. And unfortunately, I think the Dolby Vision in San Francisco is right in the heart of downtown, the heart of the population. So maximum risk. Yeah. For hopefully maximum payoff. Okay, one last bit of pop culture. Also on Disney Plus, a trailer dropped for Star Wars Visions. Uh, they, I think, announced this. I'm not sure if it was D23 or some. It might have been Anime Expo, but it's basically like what they did with Animatrix. It's allowing animation studios in Japan that traditionally do anime to take on create their own Star Wars stories, and it feels very Ouroboros, like Star Wars was created as a direct kind of inspired by ripoff of samurai stories, and which were at least of those era, the Kurosawa ones, inspired by spaghetti westerns, and then you have the cyclical thing, and now you have the Japanese version of the Star Wars stories. The animation here, definitely traditional, like hand drawn animation, looks amazing.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this. I understand like Star Wars has really borrowed heavily. I'm not going to say ripped off. I'll say borrowed heavily from from Kurosawa and a number of other Japanese filmmakers. I'm excited about the full embrace of anime that we see here. And I'm wondering how much they embrace it. Like, if you're a real anime fan, and I am not, anime's weird, man. Like the storytelling in anime is bizarre. I wonder how much they're going to allow the exploration of storytelling and especially inside of action scenes to look and feel really different than what we've gotten used to in the Star Wars universe as of late. And I hope they do. And we got some visual cues that they embraced it in the trailer, which makes me excited. Now it's a question of whether they really let the storytelling do that too.
I love that this show contrasts with What If in the sense that it is standalone stories. They are standalone stories, but they don't have to be premised on a single pivot point. It's not, what if Vader didn't turn to the dark side, or what if Qui-Gon lived? Like, sure, those are fun, fan servicey things to think about, but these are true standalone. Let's just tell a different story in a vast universe of Star Wars with lightsabers, with Jedi, or not, and let an animation studio go at it. I'm not sure if these are supposed to be considered like EU equivalents or whatever, but
Mhm.
I like that it doesn't have that burden of what if, in that it's tied to a canonical main plot, which for Star Wars we're kind of at a pause point anyway after the sequel trilogy is concluded.
Mhm.
So that's, I think, coming out. I want to say late September. And so looking forward to that. Of course, will be on Disney Plus. And then I just remembered something very important. Criterion. Now, I don't know if this is going to be on the Criterion channel, the subscription service, but Criterion announced that they have finally started to they're going to start releasing 4K Blu-rays, which for the longest time they had not. So they have, like, Criterion, known for the high quality of not just the films they put out, the quality of the films themselves, the kind of restoration that they sometimes do, and like the 4K, remasters of these films, or for new 4K transfers of these films, in addition to all the ancillary material you get from commentaries to essays to behind the scenes featurettes. All this stuff kind of make up the Criterion package. But the whole Criterion collection, as it exists, is all in 2K. It's all in 1080 on Blu-ray, or in the past on DVD. And they're slowly dipping their toes in the 4K because they have 4K transfers. They're going to put out 6 4K Blu-rays, including Citizen Kane, including The Red Shoes, and a couple others I don't remember. But come November, Citizen Kane is coming out. That's going to be a big 4K release. Not coming out as a 4K release, though. Huge part of my childhood is the Jet Li Once Upon a Time in China series, and complete
Mhm.
series, for $100, 6 films on in a box set, and
And,
that looks
and
incredible.
it's remastered, right? So it should look good on a 4K screen.
It should look real good. There's sample footage, sample clip they have on their website, and it lists all the, the behind the scenes stuff they're including with it. And it's their 5 main films that they've listed as part of this series. Plus, there is this technically a 6th film, Once Upon a Time in China and America, which is a little bit more of a comical, not exactly like Shanghai Noon, but it goes off the path. But that's also included as well. And if you haven't seen these films, they're Soy Hark directed them in early 90s. They're the reason Jet Li became an international superstar. He plays a doctor, scholar, martial artist who, in, what is it, turn of the century, late 18th century, early 19th century, kind of, fights for his homeland. And they're amazing films. So those are coming out in November. All right. Before we move on to some tech news, I want to give a shout out to 2 tested videos that you may or may not have seen. One that we published just yesterday as you were listening to this. We were down at Prop Store, our friends at Prop Store. They're running currently, actually starting at the end of this month, the Mythbusters auction. So you may have seen some of those
Mhm.
videos come out. These are all of the artifacts that were on tour as part of Mythbusters, the exhibition. Those things, props from the show, very iconic props, from Robo Shark to the cat, and all these things are going on auction to benefit the Grant Imahara Foundation, Steam Foundation. So, including the blueprints from the opening of the shows as well. You can actually get your hands on some of those blueprints. So those are being housed at Prop Store. We're down there where Adam got to shot a bunch of videos, kind of reminiscing and telling the stories of these pieces. But one other thing we also got to see is the original 1989 Batman Batwing, Kishore, the quarter scale
Yeah,
model, quarter scale. So think about
that's
this.
huge.
It's like 6 feet wide. It's mounted on a stand on the back where the jet thruster is, and it was used as a filming model. So I think they made a couple of filming models, for close-ups. This one I don't think was. I'm not sure if this is the one that when he flies up to the moon.
Moon, yeah, that's the iconic
Um,
scene.
that's the iconic scene. But for the shots like capturing the balloons and the scissor clasp that
Mhm.
comes out of the front and the little spinning rotary blade that cuts the balloons, that's actually in this model as an articulated thing. The rotating Gatling guns with strobe light to make it look like it's firing, a little Batman on the inside whose head turns. All those shots that you saw in the Tim Burton Batman were of this model, and we got to see it. It's been fully restored. They pulled off layers of paint and repainted it based on the original painting, upgraded the animatronics and all the electronics, so it's not pneumatic. It's all now servo driven, but it is one of the most beautiful miniatures I've ever seen. And to call it miniature is to not give it its full credit, because at quarter scale it is massive. So please check out that video. It's such a cool thing, and I don't know where it's going to go, but the fact that it's still alive and preserved to this day is an incredible thing.
That's awesome. Oh, one other thing I want to shout out. I think, as many tested listeners know, Adam is at a few conventions. He was at MegaCon in Orlando. He's at AwesomeCon. Is that the one
AwesomeCon in DC?
In
Yep.
DC, he'll be at Silicon. That's next week. Wow.
Wow.
2 weeks. Yeah, it's coming up.
Crazy.
I just want to say, like, the cosplay that I've seen, like, at people going to like autograph sessions, like the stuff that he's taking images from the floor, it like warms my heart as somebody that hasn't been able to go to cons for almost 2 years. And there's amazing stuff. That cat bus blew my mind. That was so beautiful. So if you haven't checked out some of his images, either on Instagram or on Twitter, I encourage you to do so, because it's amazing and makes me really excited to return to con soon.
Cat bus. There was a Hellboy Angel of Death that was there. It was so beautiful. Yeah, the fact that people are going all out, and they you can't stop the cosplayers, right? It's like they can't not cosplay, and yeah, it's to see the pictures of the panels, the photo appearances, the autograph sessions, like that stuff is all. It feels a little bit like the world's coming back together. So I can't wait for Silicon. Like, that is the end of next week. That's wow, coming up real soon. Also, I did a project last week and watched a video where I made a display case for a 6th scale Mysterio figure. It was a fun experiment with using one-sided mirrored acrylic, and that plus a fog machine, a micro fog machine. Super, super cool. I was so happy with how that ended up looking, and Mysterio I thought was the perfect figure to work with that project. So you can find those videos on Tested. So moving on, there's a few bits of tech news. We'll start with the thing that happened just as we were recording last week. Samsung had a big Galaxy Unpacked event. Kishore, we talked a little bit about the new Pixel phones previously. These are really between OnePlus, Samsung, and Pixel. Those are the phones that have the strongest footing in the States here, not the Huawei's and the ZTEs overseas. But are you interested at all by these Samsung phones?
So I'll start by saying Samsung makes the best Android phones on the market, like, period. They just do. They have the best components. They have the best cameras. I have a couple complicated feelings about this event. So I think we're seeing a slimming of Samsung's line. If you look back at what they released last year, there's like the S line of phones. There's the S Ultra line of phones. There's the A series of phones, which is more the mid-range, where we're starting to get peaks that's where like the bulk of their sales are coming from. There's the Note line of phones. And then there was I'm just going to call it somewhat disastrous flip phone unveil last year, and all the problems with them recalling it because of creasing and issues with that screen protector, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. And so they haven't announced a new Note this year. They seem to be pulling back from the S series line to a certain extent, and really elevating that A series line much more so. but they are doubling down on the flip phone. And I'm just going to off the top say, I still don't totally get the articulation of why flip is better. I'm going to put that aside.
Fold is better.
Fold is better. I can't even not call it a flip phone as if this is like the mid 2000s. I understand the technology. I understand all of that. I just don't get the use case like in my pocket. Why double thickness is going to be better experience. That being said, they've solved a lot of the issues that plagued the rollout last year. It seems like from early reviews that the crease isn't apparent when the phone is on, when the screen is on. You can still see like the crease when the phone is off, which I think is aesthetically not pleasing. But at least when you're using the phone, you don't see a fold. We have to see how that holds up over time. It's like waterproof, and it seems to be more durable than it was in years past, which would prevent the kind of like creasing and like that weird issue with the film cover coming off. They went from 60 hertz to 120 hertz, which is, I think, the right call. So like the internal stats seem to be there. Like, they have a 6.7 inch screen now. It has a Snapdragon 888 in it. Like all the stuff that you would expect is there. And like the reviews that I've been reading, the hands-on I've been seeing are people being like, oh, this is a usable phone now. Like I could buy this. Like if I wanted a nice phone, like I could see this. If I liked this idea of a foldable phone, like this is useful now. I still don't know who those people are that would be willing to pay the, almost $1,000 for this phone. But at least they've now iterated to the point where this is like a product that you can actually imagine people buying. Really curious what the hell is going on with Note though.
It's $1,800, first of all. The Z Fold 3.
Good. Oh, forget
$1,800, which is still $200 cheaper than the Z Fold 2, third generation, right? I think
I thought the Z Flip 3 was only $1,000.
No, Z Fold 2 was 2,000.
No, the Flip is the one that's cheaper, and then the Fold is like a lot more expensive.
Yes. So we're talking about two different phones right now. We're talking about the Flip versus the Fold.
Yeah. But they're both like essentially the same line of phones. Yes. There's different sizes and specs inside, but it's like they're $1,000 enough is basically the point.
I think these phones exist because they want to brute force their way into one new novel technology is going to be appealing to some segment of the audience, right? To have something different. And sometimes it works. Sometimes it dramatically doesn't work because you can't reach a critical mass of traction amongst people who, the influencers, whatever you call, because the utility doesn't overcome the expense. Two, they want to ramp up and get their legs on the manufacturing of foldable screens, period, because they see it as a competitive advantage, and they can, I'm sure the roadmaps have tons of other products outside of these type of phones where they could use and make benefit of foldable screens, maybe in commercial marketplaces, right? Not just for consumer devices. When we're talking about form factor, though, and user experience, Flip is the most akin to the aspect ratio of a traditional phone, where the benefit here then is just compactness and maybe screen protection when not using it. You're never going to really use it in the hinge mode, like when it's hinged.
Yeah, there's some notifications and you can like control like your, music and stuff. But really, you're right. There's really not much utility when it's closed.
So when it's propped open, it's taller. And so for content that's more feed-based, right? The one-handed use case that so many people use on their phones, just at a glance, the content consumption, whether you're reading an article, scrolling through an Instagram, Twitter, or whatever feed, you're getting a taller feed. That could be appealing. I don't know why the Fold 3, which seems like that's taking the position of what the Note has been.
Yeah.
How they think that's appealing, because that.
So I think you kind of answer the question. The Flip phone, and just to be super clear, the Fold folds horizontally. The Flip flips up vertically, like in the way of old flip phones. So like Flip's use case is like, I want something slightly more discreet, I guess. Um, and it's novel. I actually think that's the one I don't understand the use case as much for. The Fold is, I think you just said it. It's like they're trying to capture some of their old Note users to basically be like, here is the usability of the Note when it's unfolded. It's almost as big, not quite. You can use a stylus on it. You have to use a special stylus that's not going to damage the screen, but like generally people are like, the stylus feels the same as the Note. I think they're going after that niche. And it's a serious upgrade in price versus what the Note was, which was sub $1,000. And now you're talking about an $1,800 thing. But it's those people that want a tablet experience on a premium phone.
Who don't want to buy the tablet, who want to draw or diagram or write with a pen on a wide aspect ratio, more squarish form factor. It's not for video watching. Like video 16:9 doesn't look great on either of these devices. You're wasted real estate. But I don't like. I'm just not in tune with that Note user, the person who wants to have a phone and start scribbling on a wider palette. If you a wider canvas, if you want the wider canvas, I think you go for like a 7-inch tablet at that point.
I think there's a clear niche of users that like the Note. What I don't understand is are there a bunch of those Note users who are like, you know what would make this Note great? If I could fold it in half and put it in my pocket. Maybe that's the case. I just don't totally I don't totally buy it. I can imagine the Z Fold being nice on a plane or like places that you're compact for amount of time. You want some screen real estate, but you don't want the full experience of a laptop or a tablet. But all that being said, this is a lot of money for this, and they still have a ways to go to iterate to get to the level of specs as some of their other flagship phones. Like the cameras in this aren't as good as the stuff in the Pro, the S Pro line. So this is still like only halfway. And maybe that's what next year is going to be about, is really getting these foldable phones, like the usability down, the durability, and then getting up to there. Just a couple other things about this event that I found bizarre. The watch thing, what a mess. What a mess. Like, it doesn't even come preloaded with a lot of base Wear OS apps. Like Google Fit isn't preloaded on this. And basically Samsung's like, it almost felt like them saying out loud, and they're not wrong, that like Google has abandoned the watch market.
Which they have. Like,
which they have, right?
Yep. But they
feel like we're going to force you to use all of our Samsung built stuff ecosystem, and it is a mess. And I was just kind of like, I don't understand this thing. That's a little more concerning because that market, the Android watch market, has been a little bit dead for a while. It's the earbuds have some proprietary stuff. Like it can only be, there's certain features that only work with Samsung phones. And it's like, are we heading to a world where like when you buy your wireless earbuds now, there's only going to be certain featers that are unlocked if you're inside the ecosystem? Like you have a little bit of that with, I mean, we have a little bit of that with the AirPods, but not it's not anything new for Apple per se. But now we're seeing Android, which has historically not done that, do that right now. And so are the next generation Pixel earbuds going to do the same thing? I hate this, just aesthetically, that we're starting to get a whole, like when you buy a phone, what you're buying is to an ecosystem of accessories that only work really with that phone.
Yeah, and this I think boils down to there being fewer competitors, where Samsung feels like they don't have to worry about people who are buying LG phones and other phones and other Android phones complaining about this, because it's really, they feel like it's them versus Apple, and Google will do their own thing. And I question how committed they are to these. Note was a big Note in their Galaxy S as two big flagships. They had a really good cadence. I think they got a little greedy in trying to have two flagships in the year, and then having so much granulation in the product line. But I question how committed they are to the folds in the Flip series, and whether they see it as a Note or they see it as just a thing to get some headlines, as we're talking about it, and people are interested in reviewing them and putting Samsung, in people's mind as more of a marketing thing, and they just need to sell enough to justify the R&D and manufacture a relatively limited quantity.
Yeah, I mean, I would say they're committed to it because it's their differentiator right now. No one else is in foldable to the extent that Samsung is. So they're committed to it as long as that market actually continues to develop. And this is enough of an iteration that you could be like, maybe. People have to buy it, though.
As a differentiator, it only is valuable to them if it's a thing people care about, and you're trying to. It's like you go back to the TVs that had the curved TVs, right? It was a differentiator, but it was a problem, a solution in search of a problem that didn't exist. Whereas I think so much of phone buying today on the high end, for the people who do upgrade every year or every other year, they're looking at not necessarily what's different, but they're looking at the core features, camera, messaging, battery life as the things that get them to upgrade. And for other people who upgrade less frequently, it's going to be about costs. It's going to be about pricing and trade-ins and what's going to be part of their plan, less so what is going to be different and cutting edge. Like early adopters, still feels like an early adoption product. All right. Other bit of tech news, Boston Dynamics put out another video. This time, it's pretty amazing. So they put out a bunch of videos this past year. They had some dancing robots last year, and we got a chance to see some software, their choreographer software that allows you to script out the dance sequences and time them to key them to music. Here, they have their Atlas robots. So these are the bipedal ones, actually doing some parkour, leaps and backflips, jumping from surface to surface, scaling, like going around a curve. And it sounds like, based on their blog post and the behind the scenes video they put out, it's not just pre-programmed movements. Some of this is taking in perception information, some taking in some real-time information to adjust to perform these otherwise scripted sequences.
All right. So everyone focuses on the backflips and the walking on curved surfaces. The curved surfaces thing, around a bend is really impressive. There's one thing that's late in the video that I was like, holy crap. It's there's a balance beam, and the robot puts one arm on the balance beam and vaults itself over the beam and lands back down on its 2 feet. And I was like, my mouth dropped. I mean, all the other stuff is super impressive. I'm not taking away a second of how impressive it is, but there is monumental shifts in weight distribution and that are represented there, because every other motion that it has is using its legs as its main engine and propeller, and the center of gravity is usually being shifted around in large part by how its legs are moving. Yes, the upper body is contributing to that. That was a whole completely different range of motion that I didn't expect. We also have to talk about like the outtake video where they fall down.
And I think they're putting these videos out to show like the videos serve two purposes. One, the technology is amazing, but then there's also some quick hot take of like, these robots are too powerful. But then they also show that these are massive engineering problems. They have to show that these are massive engineering problems that they're working on, and that they're really pushing these robots to their limit. A thing as simple as, quote unquote, as simple as a vault for a human to do is massively complex, and that they say their success rate for that move is like 50%. And they're making all these on the fly adjustments just to make them happen. You see the hot takes of like, okay, this is moving down a path of scary robots, but I'm not afraid of these robots because I know how, like, yes, they are running very powerful motors. And I don't want to get close to them and get, pinched by a motor, a lot of pinch points here, but they're also very easy to knock down as well.
Yeah, to me, this illustrates, it is a technical achievement, illustrates the complexity of human motion, all of the inputs that we're taking in, the incredible processing that we do on the fly, the balance just to make some of these motions. I think the failure video is more instructive in the sense of it shows how precise the robots have to be to achieve what we saw in that like one polished cut. And I appreciate them showing it. Um, like, especially the one where it's falling down and it's like you can see like the pneumatic system is basically like expelling air out of the back. You know, I'm always going to look at these as the technical achievement more than the joke robot overlords kind of thing. Just because we've had so many of those jokes already.
And for people who are kind of putting out the warning signs, they're not looking at what the robots are doing in this video and the failure points. They're looking at, well, with iteration and the improvement curve, what then these robots might be able to do 5 or 10 years down the line. We've seen a mass amount of improvement from the days of the Honda robot, right? What's that robot called again? The
I know which one you're talking about, but I can't remember
the famous Honda robot that just did slow steps down the stairs. Hey, Jeremy Williams, what's the robot called?
They had
Osimo,
that robot,
right?
Osimo.
They had him at Disneyland, right? They like had him walk out for one of those. They had a partnership. So
Yes.
What I want to know about the Boston Dynamics robots, and forgive me if you've discussed this already, is that new video? Are they basically running an animation, or are they perceiving the environment and performing parkour on it?
Both. There's a whole blog post where they talked about what's new about this is it's a combination of the scripted actions that they have to hard code in, but perception as well. So perception allows them to apply scripted actions to variables in the environment. And a thing like the vault, we talked about how difficult just that one hand vault is of putting some stability or weight onto a beam. That was only a 50% success rate as they were filming it in their video. Yeah, pretty amazing stuff. But Osimo, that was the name of the robot. Asimo. I confuse it with there's a South Park episode where Cartman plays a robot and he's called Awesome O. That's how I should remember it. Okay, we're gonna wrap this episode up. Jeremy's jumping in just as perfect timing because we're gonna talk about Oculus and some VR. So announced just this morning as we're recording this is Facebook Connect. It's coming back. Virtual event this time, videos. It's going to be October 28th. We're not going to be going to San Jose, Jeremy. Sorry, we're not going to see our favorite developers in person, but they're going to finally do the thing that we wanted them to do last year.
It's in Horizon?
It's going to be Horizons.
Wow.
It's going to be in Horizons.
Amazing. The VR conference is actually going to be in VR finally.
So does that mean they're going to open up the beta and everybody can join?
I presume so. At least maybe the people who sign up, maybe they have. There was a tweet that announced that it'll be in Horizons on video. I can imagine that like a conference, like attendees, quote unquote, who are developers, they'll get the priority access. Maybe they're the only ones who have to go to experience it in Horizons. But Horizons has been in beta for a long time, and we've seen some of the hands-on reports. We still don't know why. We don't know why it's in beta. It's been over 2 years since we've seen it, since we first saw it.
Because it's not done.
Well, what about it isn't done? And it worries me because I know they have a lot of things they need to solve for Horizons with privacy, with moderation. They have all the liabilities they need to figure out. But you have very successful VR social platforms, metaverse equivalents in VR chat and in Rec Room that are just skyrocketing in terms of users, and Horizons is still in beta.
Yeah, I have no idea. I haven't never tried Horizons. I was able to download the project. I thought I was admitted into the beta, but apparently not. When I launched it, tried to log in, it said you're nobody to us. You may not enter. Wait till you are invited. So I don't have any idea, but from what I've read, it's like, they have there's a lot that they're trying to do with being able to do user generated content. And, in order to catch up to VR chat and Rec Room, as you said, it's as time goes by, that becomes harder and harder to do.
Yes, and I think they probably have more to lose if there was any, any user abuse. I mean, there's Rec Room is hugely backed, and they have a lot of funding behind it. But they also were able to be successful because they allowed multi-platform. Right, it wasn't a single headset device. They're on Oculus headsets, they're on PC VR, they're on PSVR, they're on phones. There's asymmetrical experiences to play Rec Room, and that's been something that can help them tremendously. Um, Something that is interesting that was just announced as I think as this podcast is being released, I think you can even try today. Something I got to demo this week called Horizon's Workplaces. Workplaces? I'm going to make sure I got this right. Workrooms. Sorry, Horizon Workrooms. I'm going to open up my press release that I got for this. So do you remember I did that demo of that experience called Spatial? It's an app that's
Sure.
on VR, and it's another company that has a ton of backing, and they've developed an application that allows collaborative workplaces, and it's also asymmetrical. It's VR and AR. So in a headset, you could create an avatar. They do that face scanning thing where you take a picture of yourself and you get mapped onto an avatar, and you get to load photos or documents. And in VR, in a virtual conference room, draw on a whiteboard, put something up on a big display, and people can video chat in. And people with HoloLens could also interact and see those same avatars floating in their real space. Horizon Workplaces is a lot like that, but VR specifically, and using a lot of the Horizons technology. So right now it's going to launch, I think it's in beta. 16 users in VR can jump into a meeting room, and you can create your Zoom equivalent scheduled call. You can be in the room, but the interesting thing about how they designed this, as opposed to free form floating around and free locomotion, everyone is set up to be tethered to their desk. They really want you to set it up so you're at your real home desk. So remember how the workplaces features in Quest allow you to map out your desk,
Yeah.
maybe track a keyboard, right? And get a floating web browser. They want that experience, but with 15 other people in VR, and maybe also 34 other people on a virtual screen, up to 50 people total.
And are we at
30
a Knights of the Round Table where everyone's at their desk in a circle?
There are 3 different layouts. There's a traditional long conference room with a long boardroom style. There's the Knights of the Round Table Justice League, circular arrangement. And then there's the stacked seating classroom style arrangement where people are in rows, and they dynamically scale. So when you're in a room with 5 people, we were in a room with like 8 people doing a demo. It's a 8-person size round table. As more people jump in, up to 16 in VR, it grows, and the circle gets bigger. So everyone's facing each other. Something that they do that's interesting, because they really want people to be mapped to their desk, and they know a lot of people have like MacBooks, right? There's a remote desktop application that ties to this. So on your MacBook, on your computer that you would be wearing your headset at, you would load up a new remote desktop application like you would see in big screen, right? A desktop client that then you get to see your laptop or your desktop screen in front of just you in VR. So you can actually see your keyboard. They actually track now MacBook Pros and Mac keyboards, and see them on your table, and you're able to type while also chatting with other people around you, or watching a presentation or a
And
video call.
presumably you can share your screen to the group.
You can share your screen to the group. You can drag and drop assets into their web portal. A cool thing they're doing. So of the demo, I thought they were doing 3 really cool things. One, the problem that we had with big screen with our avatars, they seem to have solved that with some keep alive animation, like blinking eyes. And you're looking at someone, they'll do the eyes that kind of they'll lock onto an avatar, but also pretty perfect speech to animation, like procedurally generated animation.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole thing that we saw with G-Man in Half-Life 2, where they take an audio file and the lips sync to it, they
Yeah.
have that in real time with your avatar that you've created.
Okay.
It was really cool. You're looking at a cartoon, you're looking at like a carved piece of soap Pixar character, right? An avatar, floating hands, everything's all hand tracking first. And as I'm talking to them, you get spatial audio, and you see them. You're looking at their virtual eyes. They're looking at your virtual eyes, and their mouth is moving as you're talking.
I appreciate you speaking my language with the G-Man reference. I'm still holding I will not hold my breath. That's the phrase, because until we get actual eye tracking in there, I'm just not convinced that I'm gonna fall for it. What I really want is to lose that uncanny valleyness inside VR and deepen the presence by feeling like I'm really looking and communicating with somebody. And I feel like until we get eye tracking and maybe even facial scanning, I'm not going to get what I want. But I could be wrong.
We should try it. We should maybe even do a podcast in this, because from the 45-minute demo I got to a point where I felt like I was talking to animated people, and they were talking to me. I'd like be mindful of where my hands were and listening to them. They really encourage people not to be on mute. Like, the classic, you're on a Skype or Zoom call and everyone's on mute. Not being on mute, and they have good voice cancellation for background noises, was a good thing, because you could really interject and see the animations and have a real conversation that way. The other cool thing they were doing is everyone, there's a whiteboard, right? And everyone, you turn the desk in front of you, which has your keyboard or your laptop or whatever you have set up, you can move to the side, and your table becomes a digital whiteboard. So what you draw on your table surface will pop up on the whiteboard. But how do you draw? They've figured out a way, and this is like a no-brainer thing. It's where you hold your touch controller, as opposed to you holding it in a natural grip position, you rotate it around and hold it as if you're holding a fat Sharpie. And it worked.
I believe it. That's good.
Because when you're holding it like you're holding a Sharpie or a big pen, the tracking ring is pointed right at your face.
Yeah.
So it's really accurate, and it looks like a pen, and you're drawing with it, and you're using it in a different orientation.
Right now, that to me is the most compelling part of this whole equation to me, because the whole time that you've been describing this, I'm wondering, okay, I know why Oculus is developing this app, because they want VR to be the future and they want to get there as soon as possible. They have to be experimenting. But I don't see yet why this is better than a Zoom call, because I can make facial contact or eye contact with you. I can see your actual face. I can engage with you, and I can share my desktop, and we can all do that. And we have great audio, and it's all pretty great on Zoom, although it is condensed to a single screen. And it's not, I don't have the physical presence of being with you. I don't know if I need that in order to communicate to you. But I can't draw. Like, I can't. If I was at an office, I could draw on a whiteboard. That's actually really useful for a lot of reasons. And drawing with a mouse does not work. It's a pain in the butt. As much as people try to do it in Slack, it's not great. It's not pretty. So I can see now that would be a great use if you needed to whiteboard stuff. I like that.
Their research has shown that you form memories better of your meetings when you are talking to someone and you feel presence. So we should try it. I think they're convinced that that the meetings you have here will be more meaningful than the meetings you have on Zoom, and that people, as they dog food this, actually like spending time zoned out, looking at their virtual desktop, typing on their keyboard, and then people pop in and all over the world, and you can have a quote unquote face-to-face conversation with them. It's open for beta now, so we should absolutely try this. Whether it's going to be a product they support from years to come, who knows? But the feature sets, the animations, the spatial audio, all that stuff will be available to developers. And so even if this doesn't take off, even if it is a third-party app like Spatial that they're competing with, at least the API is core to the Quest 2. It's Quest 2 exclusive, and developers can tap into that and make use of that. This is a lot of that interoperability that they've been talking about in building the metaverse.
Podcast in Horizons in the future.
I guess
Horizon Workrooms.
Yeah, the big screen one, as last I checked, was still our most watched podcast on YouTube of all time. So there's something to it.
No big movie theater, no custom backgrounds. It's gonna be their office. It looks like a boardroom. It looks, the standard VR stuff. But we should try it out. It's gonna be out today, free to use. Again, 16 people up to 50 with people jumping in via video, and you can just Google Oculus Horizons Workrooms to check it out. We'll have links in the description.
There's some interesting things going on with pass-through with some devs that have the SDK. That I guess Oculus hasn't enabled this yet to be something they can release as brand products. But like the Gravity Labs guys have their app working in augmented reality essentially, so that you assemble contraptions and manipulate them in the same sort of 3D space that you would in the normal game, except rather than being in a 3D environment, you're in your environment. And that's really cool. I can't imagine that an office experience would work very well for that, because you'd be clipping through walls everywhere. But I want to see more of that, because that to me is that's where Oculus is heading, to the augmented reality future. And that's a way for them to prototype using the Quest that seems like it's working very well.
They do the reverse here, where as opposed to it being AR, they do pass through VR, where your desk, because you've mapped it out, you can press the button, and then your desk, the mat of your desk becomes pass through, just that little window, so you can see where your coffee cup is.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, and you can see where you can put your controllers away, or you can grab a thing, but it's a touch of a virtual button, and then you get a little window into your real world.
Cool.
That does it for this week's episode. Thank you, Jeremy, for jumping in the last couple minutes to talk about our relevant things. And we'll be back next week with another episode. I'll play an outro song in the edit. But until then, we'll see you next time.
Hi there, I didn't see you.
Test it.
Just one story this week. What were you guys doing 1.8 billion years ago?
Floating around the universe in various forms.
Test it.